To kick this off, we have George from Step Finance here. Some of you may not know that George also is building out Solana All-Stars, which is a user-centric global sort of community. We have Jonas from Metacamp, who's been building a community for years in Singapore.
We're out of Singapore, guys.
And then we have On, who's leads Super Team Vietnam, who's actually one of the earlier super teams and one of the more successful as of recently for just like developer community growth. It's been happening fast in Southeast Asia and particularly in Vietnam. So, anyways, to sort of kick this off, like. Let's talk a little bit, like, let's just go down the line initially, and I sort of gave a brief intro, but George, like what the hell is Solana All-Stars?
It's about getting users. Like, we've got all of these apps we're building, we've got all of these developers, we've got all of these different conferences like Breakpoint. Now we need people to go and use the things, right? So essentially All-Stars, that's the thesis for All-Stars, where we have lots of mini events that reinforce that every about 2.5 weeks in about 8 cities around the world, predominantly Nigeria and Turkey. And people go there, we have hundreds of people every couple of weeks in each city. So that's usually 2 events per city per month. And yeah, people are going there and they're learning how to use the protocols for the first time. They're learning how to make a wallet. They're learning how to do a swap, how to stake, how to do any of these things which we all need active participants in the community. And also I would add that this month, we had about 1,000 people a month in last month going to our meetups just for All-Stars.
In what countries?
In Turkey and Nigeria. And we hope by the end of the year to have 2,000. Which would be awesome. And I guess the message is a lot of DeFi apps and other things out there, they have like 200 monthly active users or something like that. So if you want to get your products in front of real people, like we think that this is a great way to do it. So yeah, that's what it's all about. Get people involved.
I think like the user stuff, when you told me you were doing that, I was like, this is great because everybody's just like, well, me particularly, screaming devs, 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 and then you have all these devs and all these products, and then you have no users. So like that piece is like, and there's also the founding and product part of all this, but like it only works if you bring them sort of all together.
Yeah.
Now, Jonas, you and I have been working together for a little bit over a year now, like with the Metacamp stuff. So like, tell us about Metacamp and what you guys have been doing there.
Yeah, so Metacamp emerged out of a need. I remember very clearly 2022 when we attended Hacker House Singapore, the first edition in February. We were so excited about what's going on in blockchain, and the culture was very intimate. And we had the need, I'm not a developer actually, I'm business development, physics background, and I wanted to learn how to build blockchain applications, but the landscape back then was really chewing grass. It was really hard for us to put together the resources. And what we did is basically, thanks to Justin, who was also part of Metacamp in the audience right now, we organized these meetups where we just came together, handful of people, to share how we can, how we best learn Solana, building on Solana. And then from a 5 people event every week, we went to 40 people event, and then I'm like, hey Chase, let's do it bigger, and then
You should see this guy's Notion document of how many events and how many people have showed up to these things. I remember when you first messaged me and you were like, hey, like we can't do coffee shops anymore. There's too many people coming to these things.
Yeah, now we have we organized throughout the year, within this 1 year that we are doing Metacamp, 120 events in total, 6,000 people showed up, like around 50 people per event kind of. That's on average. Some events have more and less, but mostly supporting developers, but also non-devs, because we realized that going through that journey, building great products is not only about developers, but about people who have empathy to users and understanding their pain points and talking to them, building a product for them, rather just for the tech.
Yeah. So On from Super Team Vietnam, he's a stand-in for 2 separate cancellations. For some reason, people just don't show up to my panels. Anyways, like maybe I want to talk about Vietnam and what you've particularly done, but maybe for people who don't know what Super Team is, you could demystify that a little bit. Because depending on who you ask, you'll get a totally different answer.
Yeah. I would say that so Super Team is basically part of New Markets at Solana Foundation, and the objective of Super Team is to go into a new country and to find the best developers in those countries, engage them, and get them to build on Solana. right? That's the basics of the work that we do. We started off in India, and then Vietnam was the second market. Then we move on to Turkey, Germany, UK, UAE now, Brazil. So there's about 11 different super teams around the world. And the primary objective really is how do we find the very, very best developers that are out there, help build a community, and engage them to build the next great apps on our chain.
Yeah, I like to I usually refer to super teams as sort of miniature Solana foundations. They're just sort of doing the same sort of work in a regional way. And also UAEs, I think, is probably the different market there. It's sort of like if you think about markets and growing communities, there's founders markets, there's sort of developer markets, there's capital markets, and you've got to sort of figure out, a super team figures out what is this market and how do we go into it. So with that said, what have you been doing for Super Team Vietnam?
Yeah, 100%, right? Not all super teams are built equally, right? So for Vietnam, it's a huge science and technology country. We have something about, I think Vietnam graduates something in the neighborhood of 75,000 people in science, math, technology, STEM type courses every single year. And so there's a huge plethora of developers, engineers in Vietnam. And our objective and what we've been working on is to try to really get some of those developers to obviously come onto Solana. Even out of Vietnam, Web3 has been a huge part of the ecosystem. Some of the biggest companies, in the world actually started from Vietnam. Companies like Axie Infinity, Kyber Networks, Coin98, some of these more marquee names in global Web3. And especially with Axie, there was that whole play to earn summer, right? And everybody and their mother in Vietnam, was trying to make money through these play to earn games. But that trickled out to the rest of society. And people were like, shit, I don't have to just get a job at an outsourcing company to develop some small piece of tech for Google or Facebook. I can actually build a smart contract and launch, my own very next Axie Infinity or Coin98 type company. And so we've been trying to get to those developers and trying to harness them to build, the next generation of apps out there.
Nice. So that's sort of a nice segue into the next question, is that's what you're trying to do. So whether it's users, whether it's developers, whether it doesn't really matter, what are some of the challenges that are faced? And I know this is super nuanced because if you look at different countries, there's sort of different expectations. It's not always easy to sort of just get people to buy in and join a community, because a lot of times, depending on the market, there needs to be an opportunity on the other side of that community. So what are some of the challenges that you guys faced and just being hey guys, come to Web3 and do all this stuff. Anybody can go, whoever.
I think it's about finding the right people to be able to actually do that. It sounds like a kind of basic answer to that question, but it really does matter. If you don't have the right people on the ground to be running it, who's organizing the logistics? How many people are there? Where's the event venue? How often are you doing the events?
Is it the right target group?
Is it the right target? Is it, are there going to be food at the event? Who's going to organize that? How are the payments going to work? All these different things, right? So it does take a lot of logistical planning ahead to be able to do these events, but then of course you have to provide the content for the events, right, as well. So yeah, what kind of content, how long, what are people going to be, what are the takeaways you want from people? What are the actionable things that you want? And in our case with All Stars, we want everyone to have done an on-chain action. So we have a call to action every single event. Either people are claiming, tokens as the tip links thing you see here, at Breakpoint or whatever else it might be. Maybe you learn about staking today and okay, everyone then goes and stakes with Marinade or something like that, right? So some sort of call to action is really important and we measure that and then we discuss about it and how can we improve that, how can we get the numbers up each week, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's just the hardest thing is a lot of planning and having the right people able to do that. And then it's all very well to do that in one city, right? Okay, what about 10? And also, let's say you're in one country, there's 10 different cities, you have a country manager. Who's going to be the person in city number 7 to do that, right? And okay, so one person can't cover multiple locations, therefore you have to have multiple people with multiple high skill threshold levels of being able to talk about literally everything from staking to DeFi dexes to, options vaults and all sorts of other crazy stuff, right? So you just need to find the right people. And I think, yeah, that's one of the things that we always look for.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like, how do you, like, you're talking, like, this is interesting because you're talking about like global sort of like all over the place stuff, and then you have Jonas here who's like at a singular location, and On is sort of like multi-location throughout like Southeast Asia. It's like, for you, how do you fix the leaky bucket problem of like, you're doing these events, like, how do you make sure that that event isn't just like a one and done and these groups stay there?
Yeah, we don't want people to go there, have a pizza and call it a day and go, wow, that was great, good pizza. Like, we actually want some actionable things from it. So I think it's about being consistent and being in that market, that in that city, there is always a Solana event going. And that's really important for the mind share as well, right? Because you can have a hacker house in one place for once a year. Great, everyone goes there, they love it. Awesome, everyone loves hacker houses, it's great fun. Okay, so are people still going to be as engaged as when they leave that hacker house 6 months from then?
Right.
You need this consistent reinforcement of the events all the time. So yeah, that's what we go for.
Jonas, you and I have talked about this a lot, like the challenges. So like, I'm interested to hear like the sort of 1 year recap of all the sort of challenges you faced, like trying to build a community in Singapore, which isn't a heavy dev market. Like there's a lot of stuff there, but you still managed to get a lot of developers into the pipeline.
Definitely. I would like to touch upon 3 points. So the first point is reach. So reaching, like finding passionate developers, skilled developers is very, very hard in a country like Singapore, which is very small, which has, let's say, so many opportunity costs if they go for something like a startup in the Solana space, right? They need to be incentivized. So for us, our main target for the beginning was reaching out to universities. And reaching out to universities, especially in Singapore, which is a very saturated market with a lot of blockchains already established, Ethereum, Algorand, and all these others, it was quite hard for us to actually like find a point to enter and reach out to the students. So for us, what we did is we did a two-sides approach. So we went top-down. We went to institutions, professors, talked to them, trying to find a way to get the students, but also we worked with student societies bottom up. So we organized a lot of events to get the reach. And that really helped us by working with those external partners, institutions that have already a big network to get people in that hopefully are also passionate about it. And then the second thing is the second challenge is you need to give them a program which convert them from a passionate developer or passionate blockchain enthusiast to a skilled blockchain builder that will produce valuable products or projects, right? So then in this case, the second challenge is really about the program, like adapting to building a program that is not too long and not too short. Because students have only a certain amount of time, of attention and commitment, but also not only the time is important, but for us, it was really hard to find a trade-off or like to actually adapt to the changes what Solana is going through. We have Metaplex, now we have CNFTs, programmable tokens, and all these kind of stuff, and we need to keep up with the changes and also teach them.
It's a double-edged sword. They keep shipping, but also like you have to keep adjusting on a regular basis.
And the last challenge that we face is about sustainability. So what we put for ourselves, the very first when we worked with Solana Foundation, is whatever we do, let's say in 1 year or 2 years, Solana Foundation gets broke, okay? But we can still continue. So we were like constantly finding revenue streams on how to sustain the operations of nurturing talents and innovation for the Solana ecosystem. So that has been a big challenge too.
Yeah, awesome. How about you, On? How's it been in Vietnam?
This is great. Everything everybody said is awesome. Consistency definitely is one of the key things. But I'll keep it short. I get asked this from time to time, like, who's your biggest competitor in Vietnam? Is it Ethereum? Is it, Sui? Who is it, right? And I always say it's none of the other chains are our competition. It's time, right? And especially in a bear market, time is our biggest competitor because we really can capture like these interested developers for a very short period of time. And we've got to find a way to bring them on board into blockchain, show them how to build an application on blockchain, show them how to find users, which is, that's a different level of difficulty, but be able to not just build something, but earn money from there. Because at the end of the day, you're competing against the Googles, the Facebooks, all the Web 2 startup companies around the world. And for us, it's about finding a good course to onboard these developers, but also drip them money and finding a way to keep them engaged in the ecosystem, be it through a grant program, winning bounties, winning smaller hackathons. It doesn't have to be a Hyperdrive $50,000 check, right? It could be a $500 check, right, at various little hackathons. And then it could be a $300 essay that they write. But you've got to find a way to keep that community engaged, especially in this bear market. And especially because, you can bring them into your funnel, but you only have a certain amount of time. And if you don't provide the money, they're going to go somewhere else to get money.
Yeah, I mean, I have a thing that I say. It's like you can onboard 1 million developers or specifically developers. You can onboard 1 million developers, but if you don't get them access to opportunity in like 30 to 60 days, they're gone. They go back to Web 2. They go for another blockchain. It really doesn't matter. So it's super important to make sure that it's easier in some regions than it is others to do that. We're a bit spoiled in the West, so it's not as easy to build communities in those regions. So what's the Solana ecosystem has been very successful. Like, I have enough Anon accounts and other ecosystems on Twitter to know that like the energy on those communities is not at the same level it is like in terms of just like, let's build, let's talk, let me help you sort of stuff. It's a little bit different. So like, what do you guys think is the reason? It could be why you're here or why we've been so successful in the community sort of growth funnel.
I think you alluded to it at the start of this thing, right? Like, what does Solana do different to a lot of other chains? I mean, it's the IRL stuff as well. I think the amount of projects that have come after hackathons is, I mean, literally everyone, pretty much, that I know. And people that have gone to hacker houses, how many people have gone to hacker houses? Probably like 90% plus of attendees and stuff. So I think these are the things which engage people and keep bringing them back. And these are things which Solana and the community's done right. And I think that just, like the theory is, you bring the developers, they build stuff, and then the stuff that they build brings the users, right? And that's been the Solana story, I think, for the last 2 years at least. And I agree with that. I think, look, that's taken Solana a very long way through the bear market. And imagine if we didn't have all of these things going on. We didn't have hackathons. We didn't have 907 submissions to Hyperdrive or whatever it was. What if we had zero of these things going on? And then there was just no projects building anything ever. And everyone just sort of sitting around, moping around, going, oh, the number's down, doesn't it suck? Like, some ecosystems are actually like that, right? So I think some of the things which Solana's done really well has been these IRL events. And yes, this is like an IRL events kind of panel thing, but really that actually is the success metric. And so I think from that, the rest of the community just comes from that, right? Whether it's Anon Twitter accounts telling you how wonderful X or Y is, like awesome. But they're only going to do that if people are building interesting things of which get them excited for them to talk about. So it's like chicken and the egg. You need people to build interesting things first.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, from my side, the reason why I joined Solana and why I see also maybe the community is growing here is really the tech. I mean, there are two things. One is tech. Tech is, I mean, it's the only blockchain where you can build consumer applications and for masses. I mean, that's only possible in Solana right now. And number two, if you look at the culture that we kind of like nurturing here with Solana, compared to Ethereum, I just talked to somebody who just came here from, I mean, with an ETH background. They said like, oh, the community in Ethereum, they're all competing with each other. They're all not sharing what they're doing. Like, they're all in their own circles. And we are just open and sharing, supportive. And that's the culture that we are nurturing. And that's what people like attract to come to Solana, because they see the opportunity to grow together with the support of the community.
Yeah, and I think I've done enough episodes of my podcast to hear this. Like, there's at least 5 people that came for the tech, stayed for the vibes, was just like the shortest form version of what you just said there, which is awesome to hear.
I think these guys said it right. I mean,
yeah.
Now the difficulty, right? The next big step, we've got the community, we've got like 900 plus projects that got submitted to Hyperdrive. Now it's like, how do we continue with the education courses, how do we drip money to these guys? How do we focus a lot of their efforts on creating consumer apps? Like, we've got to really start focusing ourselves away from just Web3 native tools. I think we almost got to that inflection point where we've got a lot of the great Web3 native tools, we've got a lot of the great infrastructure, now where are the consumer apps? I mean, Mark Cuban the other day said that the thing that's missing from Web3 is the Instagram moment, right? I mean, Web3 does not have the Instagram moment. It doesn't have any apps where your mother and your grandmother will use. So, I think that we got to focus and try to get us to that point.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had a thought when George was talking about like developers, like, which is like I'm just hyper focused on, and then they get the users, but there is like a missing part like of all of that is like devs think they can do everything. They can't. They're not UX guys. They're not product people. They're not always founders. It's like you have to find all of where are the product people coming in and tying into the devs that are also like looking for a founder that can deal with all the shit that they don't want to do so that they can just go build the thing. So I think we're really good on devs, we're getting really solid on users, but we're still missing some parts in the middle there. Forcing devs to be founders is not necessarily the answer, I don't think. So
events maybe like this is one way, maybe matching sessions, maybe part of the hyperdrive, like follow-ups to that for the winners. And ultimately, like, you can't, there needs to be funding at some stage, right? Yep. You can't just, eat ramen for the next 2 years if you have a bunch of money, right? So, like, the VC side of things, even though it's a dirty word, it is necessary. Like, we need to be able to hire people, right? We need to be able to pay the bills. So I think that's a necessary thing, is to attract capital, but also the capital is only going to be attracted if you actually have a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, and I think we are probably there to where we have a lot of awesome stuff going on. Like Render Network is now on Solana, like with some like really big, like the Depend stuff, all these things are awesome, but you're right, like whenever I see markets turn around, I don't think about number go up, I think about all these VCs that are now ready to deploy capital into a project that can then hire people downstream from that. And like now this is where the opportunities flywheel starts to come in. So it's just like so many layers to growing communities. One of the hardest parts is keeping retention up in the middle of a bear market. It's one of the most challenging things that like any of us could do. You know, Jonas and I talked about this a lot on our calls. It's like, it's really hard out there. I'm like, dude, you're not the only person who feels how hard it is right now. So I guess we got a minute left, just to wrap it up with one final question is like, how do we continue to grow from here? Like, like super teams are popping up, Solana All-Stars is on the road, like we have a lot of cool stuff, but like, how do you like go from 75 devs, which we have right now, to like, and jokes aside, like how do we expand even bigger from here? Anybody have any thoughts?
So from MetaCamp side, right? I mean, I see it from globally with the super teams. We are spreading out the communities. It's getting easier or more clear on how to start a community. I mean, you can basically start, if some people of you guys want to start a community in your own country, basically find some people who are interested in Solana, meet up with some pizzas, with some drinks, and hang out. That's how basically MetaCamp started. But I think going further and growing further is what MetaCamp is trying to do right now, is to integrate deeper into the local institutional landscape. So what we do is, for example, we accredit like our courses, our programs with government institutions so that this program, this education program, can be provided to a broader reach of people who then get subsidies from the government, and also working with institutions like university to get it accredited with MCs or like these university points. So it's in the curriculum of the university in the blockchain module. So these are the things for us where we want to integrate very deep and be there not only for 1 year, but for the next 5-10 years. Cool.
Well, that wraps us up. That's the end. Thank you guys for all coming to listen to us talk about Solana communities. And enjoy the rest of your Breakpoint. Also, main stage hackathon is about to be announced of all the winners here, I think at 2:30 or something like that. So if you're waiting to hear those results, they'll be announced shortly.
Awesome.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.